have been, oh, 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 we have been factoring things like this right here. In the first section of factoring, this. And by the way, there's nothing common to all of those, right? Nothing in common. So the next kind of factoring is the two kind of binomial factors. Hopefully by now you're getting pretty good at these. You start, what times what is x squared? X and x. What times what is 18? Well, could be a lot of things, right? And I didn't leave enough room over there. So could be 1 and 18, 2 times 9, is that it? What else? 6 and 3. Of those now, we need the combination that will add to 11. What combination will add to 11? Any of those? Because remember, if none of the combinations will add to 11, then it's prime. Okay. Would you run down and see if there's any expired? Just grab like a case, mix up a case of expired and bring it in here. You did put the key back?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
I
didn't know that's where you were going.
Yeah, I just checked to make sure no extra cases. There's like 2 left in selling on.
Okay, so they didn't bring any new. Okay. I thought they had brought it, but oh well. I'll order some. Anyway, so it has to add to add to 11. And if none of these add to 11, then it's got to be prime, right? Do any of these add up to 11? 9 and 2. So I'll take that pair. It's a 9 and a 2. 9 times 2 is 18, and they add up to 11. Now for the signs, and I hope you've been doing it this way because it'll make your job easier today. If you have a positive here, how do you multiply these two numbers and get a positive? Well, you're going to have to multiply a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, right? And because this is a negative, it's negative, negative. And this, oh, I forgot the inside, outside, double check. What do you get right here for the inside? Negative 9x. And what do you get for the outside? Negative 2 times x. That, when you combine those, that answer should be what's in the middle up there, right? The inside, outside, double check. Well, all of the ones that you did, I don't know if you noticed, they all had positives down there. So that means it's either got to be plus, plus, or minus, minus. Well, today's section, now we're going to have a negative down there. But you do it pretty much the same way, right? You start off and you ask. You start here still the same way. What times what is x squared? Has to be x times x. There's no other possibility. Then you go down to the other end. You've got a 10. You still ask yourself what factor pairs for 10. Well, it could be 1 and 10. It could be 2 and 5. Now, here's where it's a little bit different. Remember over here they had to add to 11. Well, now they have to subtract to 3. Instead of adding to that middle number, now these two factor pairs have to subtract. If I do 10 take away 1, would that give me a 3? No. So I know it's not 10 and 1. If I do 2 take away 5, 5 take away 2, could I get a 3? Yes, right? So I know the factor pair has to be 5 and 2. They have to subtract to that number now. Now the signs. And a lot of people try to find a shortcut way to do this. A lot of people try to find a shortcut way to do this. The shortcut won't work. You think you're being clever. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to come up with something, but it doesn't work. They think, oh, minus, it's got to be minus, minus. Well, look, right here it's a minus. That doesn't mean these are minus, minus. And some people think, oh, I can just put minus and minus. Here's what you have to ask yourself. How do I multiply these two numbers, 5 times 2, and get a negative 10? How do you multiply two numbers and get a negative? You have to have one of each, a positive and a negative, right? Over here, you were multiplying two numbers to get a positive. So it had to be positive times positive or negative times negative. On this side, we're multiplying two numbers to get a negative. The only way, there is only one way to multiply two numbers and get a negative answer. You have one of each. And it makes a difference. You can't just put the positive and negative wherever you feel like it. You have to do a specific order to try to figure out which is which. So you see this negative in the middle right there? That negative 3? Here's what you have to ask yourself this time. You look and see which one of these is bigger, 5 or 2. What's the bigger number? 5. The bigger number is always going to get what's in the middle. Since this is a negative, the big one's going to get negative. So what does that mean this one must be? Positive, right? One has to be negative and one has to be positive. You take the bigger of these two, 5 or 2, which one's bigger? 5. You take the bigger one, and it always gets whatever this sign is. So 5 is going to get the negative, and then that means obviously 2 has to be positive. Now, here's where it's important that you do the inside-outside double check. What do you get right here? Negative 5 times x. Negative 5x. What do you get right here? Positive 2 times x, positive 2x. Now if you combine negative 5x and positive 2x, you get negative 3. You're good, right? So this then, that's your final answer. And it doesn't matter if you have the x plus 2 first and then the x minus 5. What you have to make sure of, it's an x minus 5 and it's an x plus 2. It doesn't matter if that whole term comes first, but you have to have one of each, x minus 5, x plus 2. Does that sort of make sense? We'll do a few more. Do you have questions on this one before I move on? So here we go on this one. What times what is x squared? Has to be x and x. 420. 420. Could be 1 and 20. Could be 2 and 10. Anything else? 5 and 4? 4 times 5 is 20. I think that's it. Uh-oh. There's no number here. There's no number there. Now what? What do you assume is there? 1. You assume it's a 1. So in this case, I need a combination that will subtract to that 1 that's there. Which combination will subtract to 1? Raise your hand, put your hand up if that's too much. Put your hand up a little bit, or a thumb, or just a finger if you know what combination we should use that would subtract to 1. Let me see. Put something up as long as it's not your middle finger. What do you have up back there? Oh, do you know which pair? No. Oh, okay. It's got to subtract to 1. Well, could 20 and 1, could those possibly subtract to 1? No, cross it off. How about 10 and 2? 10 take away 2 is 8, not 1. How about 4 and 5?
Yeah.
Yes, 5 take away 4 is 1. So 5, 4. We have the basic shell, now we need the signs. It's a negative here. How do you multiply two numbers and get a negative? Yeah, you have to have one of each. And does it matter where you put? Yes, it does matter which one goes with what. How do you decide which value gets the negative and which gets the positive? You take the bigger of these two. What's bigger, 5 or 4? 5 is bigger. And then you look in the middle right there. Whatever that one is, the big value gets. So 5 is bigger, it's going to get the negative. 4 is smaller, it'll get the other one. Does that make sense? You look to see which of these is bigger. Whatever is in the middle, the big one gets. Double check. What's negative 5 times x, bless you? Negative 5x. Here, what's positive 4 times x? And if you combine those, you get a negative 1x, do you? You get a negative 1x. You get a negative 1x. So far, so good? Anybody with questions yet? Well, let's do a couple more just for fun. How about this one? A squared, that one's good. That has to be AA. What about the 30? What are my factor pairs? Could be 1 and 30. What else? Mason? 5 and 6. What else? 2 goes in there. And what else? 3 and 10. Holy cow, there's a bunch of them. Now, I need the pair that will subtract to that value right there. It has to subtract to 29. Is there a pair that would subtract to 29? 30 and 1? You're lucky it's right on top. 30 and 1. Or 1 and 30, doesn't matter which goes where. But now watch this. Again, it's a negative. How do you multiply those two numbers and get a negative? It's got to be one of each. A negative and a positive. Which is bigger, 30 or 1? 30. What's 30 going to get? It's going to get whatever's in the middle. So what's 30 going to get this time? The positive. And that means that one has to be the negative. Does that make sense? Now we'll do the double check. What do you get here? Positive 30A. It's positive 30 times A. What do you get here? Negative 1 times A is negative 1A. And if you combine those, do you get what's in the middle? Yes, positive 29A. Questions so far? Oh, let's do another one, just for fun. Aren't these fun, Donahue?
Oh, wow.
Hey, Donahue, you can be my witness. I've been telling them that factoring, they're going to need to know it. And over and over and over. When does factoring go away? Never. So this is one skill, would you agree? They need to know how to do it correctly. Yes, this is one of the major things that if you don't do it, how are we going to build the house if we don't know how to do factoring? It's going to cave right in, would you agree? Yeah. So this is one skill. Some of the other stuff you can gloss over and maybe get by, but factoring, you're really going to need to know how to use it. It never goes away. It never goes away. Back in the old days, I would come right up to you and say, It never goes away. But I can't this year. Right, Donahue?
Right.
I would. So much of my personality is being robbed. Lucky for you. So back to this one. A squared. A times A. Has to be A times A. Then we'll go down to 30. Hey, we just did 30. I got these factor pairs right here. We just listed them. It must be the same, right? No. The factor pairs are the same, but we're not going to use the same factor pair. Now we need one that will subtract to 7. Are there any factor pairs there that will subtract to 7? 3 and 10, he says. Anybody agree? Yes. When will this be over? She says, I'm almost done. 3 and 10. 10 take away 3 is 7. So 3, 10. It's negative. How do you multiply two numbers and get a negative? You gotta have one of each. Remember how to decide? The big one is gonna get whatever this is. So what's bigger, 3 or 10? 10 is bigger, it's gonna get the, and so that means that one's negative. And then you're gonna do the double check, right? Inside, outside, what do you get here? And what do you get here? And if you combine those, positive 10, negative 3, you better get this thing. And we do, right? Do you want to see some more examples? I think you have it. It's the same process if you learned over here, okay, how do I multiply and get this? It's got to be a positive positive or a negative negative, whatever that. You know, it's the same sort of process. How do I get a negative? Well, that means I've got to have one of each. Whatever the biggest, whatever's in the middle here, the bigger one of those two gets. So that's the only place that it's different. Over here, it was going to either be positive positive or negative negative. Whatever's in the middle, that's what they both are. On this one, when it's a negative, that means you have one of each. And whatever's in the middle this time, the big one gets. Does that make sense? Give me a thumb. Yes? Maybe? All right. You know you can always ask me questions if you're working and you're not sure. You know you can always ask me questions at home. If you get stuck, it doesn't have to be this hour, you know. If you get stuck any time of the day, just email me. And I can send a picture. I think that works really well. And I write some things, stuff that I would say to explain it. I write it in the margin and then just send a picture of it. Anytime you can email me if you have a question, you know. Google Classroom, I found if you send me a message in Google Classroom, I usually only am on, I'm on first hour for this class, first hour. Second hour, I'm on the second hour one, third hour. So I don't know if I always see it. But if you email me, I will see that. Do you have questions on this? Anybody with a question? Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? I don't think there's any questions. So what do we have? I think that would be page 218. Yes, page 218 will do. Page, I think it's only on 218. 218. You know what? We're just going to do 218. We'll go 1 to 28, the odds. Well, that would be 1 to 27, the odds then, right? WE 1 to 27 the odds. And wait a minute, let's see how many primes there are. See if I can count today. 1, 2, that's it. It looks like there are 2 primes, 2 odd primes, 2 odd primes. So there you go. I'll be in my office taking attendance and posting the picture of the book if you need me.